In today's session, I will be talking about enhancements in Web Runner in ALM 17 and ALM 17.0.1, which was released very recently. Let me begin with a brief introduction to Web Runner. So Web Runner is the ALM's web user interface through which partial functionalities of ALM can be accessed through browsers without the need to install any ALM components. It can be accessed directly through the Web Runner URL or through the QC bin page wherein you could click on the Web Runner link. Web Runner was initially introduced in ALM 15 with very few modules and very few functionalities. And then after that, with every new ALM version release, new features and functionalities which our customers most demand for have been added to the Web Runner. In today's session, let's look at the enhancements in ALM 17 and ALM 17.0.1, and them being two new modules have been introduced. So the major modules in ALM are now available through Web Runner. Then let's look at the new and enhanced features and functionalities in Test Plan, Test Lab, and Defects module in this version. From admin perspective, we look at the group permissions that can be set to access Web Runner by different user groups in the project. And then we have the Web Runner admin, which can now be accessed by our SaaS customer admins without the need to open a request for any modifications. In ALM 17.0.1, the manual runner UI has been revamped. From the requirements perspective, test coverage has been added, and then the entity settings option that was available in the previous versions has been replaced. So we'll talk more about it in the coming slides. Now let's look at the enhancements in ALM 17. So the two new modules that have been added are as below. So we have the requirements module, where the users can view the requirement tree from the Web Runner UI. They also have the option to create requirement folders and different requirement types through the Web Runner UI. The second module that has been added is the releases module, wherein the user can view the releases that were defined for the project. They are also able to add new releases and new cycles through the Web Runner UI. From the test perspective, the enhancements that have been made are in the test lab module, the users can now create the test set tree. So from this module, they will be able to create test set folders. They can create test sets and also add tests to the test sets, wherein test instances are created. The second enhancement from the test perspective is the call to test functionality has been added in the test plan module. So here, when you're defining the test steps for the test, you can add the test by using the call to test functionality, and this would call the specific test when the tests are being run. So moving to the next enhancements is in the defects module, wherein from the columns perspective, we have new functionalities added, where the first thing is you could sort the field based on the value of the field by using the sort functionality. The second is you could resize the column size that is available in the defects view. And the third option is you could select any of the fields that you'd like to view in this UI by using the select column functionality. The second enhancements that have been done in the defects module is that we have the history tab that is now available. So the UI for the defect details has been revamped, and we have the history tab wherein you can see the changes that have been done in specific fields where the history has been selected. The third enhancement is the update selected button that has been added. So this will allow the users to select multiple defects and update any specific field with a specific value for the defects that have been selected. So the most awaited feature from Web Runner perspective is the workflows has now been enabled in ALM version 17. So the users will be able to add workflows by using Web Runner UI. Now, some of the key things to note with regards to workflows for Web Runner is that the workflows in Web Runner uses JavaScript and does not use VB scripts that is used in the desktop client. Now, the existing workflows in the project will not be converted automatically. So it will need to be converted from the VB script to JavaScript and then added to Web Runner manually. From the maintenance perspective, if workflow needs to be updated, then they will need to be updated both on the desktop client and the Web Runner workflows as well. We'll speak more about workflows in the demo, but yes, we have workflows in Web Runner now. So from the administration perspective, there are a few enhancements. First is that we can define like which user groups can have access to Web Runner by going to the project customization and module access. Now, this functionality could be useful when you have like workflows defined for certain modules. Let's say you have workflows defined for defects and you would not like developers to access defects from Web Runner. So you could define such conditions by using the module access and Web Runner functionality that has now been added. And Web Runner admin page, which was previously not being able to access by the SaaS customer admins, is now being provided. So the customer admins can now access Web Runner admin page to define like which projects will access Web Runner. They can also define which modules in Web Runner can be accessed by the project users. So previously this had to be done through the SaaS team. So hence a request had to be raised and the SaaS team would work on it to implement these changes. But now this can be managed by the SaaS customer admins through this Web Runner admin page. Now let's look at some of the functionalities that have been enhanced in version 17.0.1. So first being the manual runner. So I've added two screenshots here. The manual runner UI, which was available in the previous versions, looked something like this. But in 17.0.1, this has been revamped and the UI would look something like this. I will show it in a demo as well, but it has been made more user-friendly, so it will be easier for users to run manual tests. So from coverage perspective, in the requirements module, we have the test coverage tab that is now available, through which you could see the tests that have been like covered, which cover the requirements, and you could also add more tests that would cover the requirements. And from the test plan perspective as well, we have the requirement coverage tab that has been added. So this will give you a view of like what are the requirements that are being covered by the specific tests that have been defined. So from the entity settings perspective, the entity settings tab has now been discontinued in ALM 17.0.1. The reason being we have the select columns tab enabled for most of the modules that are available in Web Runner. And we also have workflow that can be used to configure the entity settings that we would previously be able to do it through the entity settings UI. So these were a few of the enhancements that have been implemented in these versions. Moving to the main differences between the desktop client and the Web Runner, we have a PDF that is available that gives a clear description of like what are the features and functionalities that are available in the desktop client and which of the Web Runner versions have what functionalities available. One of the things to note is that the Web Runner does not have all the functionalities that is available in ALM desktop client. Hence, for any project that is being worked on, we will need users, at least some users, to have access to the desktop client to do the configurations that are required from the project perspective, wherein you could have a combination of users who are using desktop client or Web Runner. So these were some of the key features. Now I'll move to the demo wherein we can see how these features look like on Web Runner. So here I'm accessing ALM 17. And just to give you a quick snapshot, this is ALM 16 in which the web runner used to look like this. And in ALM 17, we have these two new modules that have been added. So first being the requirements module, in which we can see all the requirements that have been defined in the project, the requirement tree, and we have the requirement folders along with the different requirement types in a hierarchical format. So if the user wants to add a requirement folder, they can do so by clicking on new requirement folder option. And similarly, they can create new requirements by selecting the new requirement tab. So here the user will need to define all the required fields and can define the other fields and can define the different requirement types. Let me try to create one. Yeah, and if the requirements have been defined in rich text, that can also be added by using the rich text option in the Web Runner UI. Moving to the next new module that has been added is the releases module. Here again, in the releases module, we can see the releases tree that has been defined for this project. If the user requires, the user has the ability to create new releases folder, and they can create new releases, say release 1 with the start date and end date. With a description. And have the functionality to add new cycles. So they can also view the different releases that have been predefined in the project. They can also view the milestones. This is about the two new modules that have been added in ALM 17. Now moving to the next functionality, which is with regards to the tests. In the test lab module, previously we didn't have the option to create test set folders or test sets. And in this version, we have that functionality that's being added to create new test set folders and create test sets as well. And once the test sets have been added, they can select the tests from the test plan module by using the select test option. So from the test plan perspective, in the design steps column, we have the new functionality for call to test that has been added. In the defects module, for the column sections, we have new functionalities that have been added, wherein you have the functionality to resize the column, or you can sort the columns based on the value of that column. We also have the select column option, wherein you can add more fields or remove fields from the view. So if you go to the defects details, again, the UI has been revamped and we have the history tab that is now available, wherein you can see the fields that have been changed over time for the fields for which history has been selected. And then we have the update selected option, in which multiple defects can be selected and you could update the field for these defects that have been selected. So we see that the assign to field has been changed as per the update selected option. Now, one of the awaited feature is the workflows that has been added in this version, wherein we can go to the settings and customize option. And here you see all the workflow functionalities. We'll see some of them that have been grayed off. So these functionalities are currently not available in Web Runner, but other functionalities are available. code that can be used in these workflows is JavaScript. And to begin with, if you would like to have some example JavaScripts, highly recommend going to our help center, wherein we have like details of like how to begin with workflow scripts. And if you need examples to get started with, give a search for a JavaScript, and this will give you a list of examples. And by going to any of these examples, you will get one code with VB script and one code with JavaScript. So this would be ideal place to start off with, to take some sample codes and then work it out. Also in Web Runner, the UI is very helpful. So for example, if I'm starting off typing, you can see that the UI suggests the functions that can be used. And also if you see, if there are any syntax errors, it quickly comes up with the syntax error and even gives suggestions on how we could fix them. So here I'm starting off with like bug fields, and it is already giving me like the options of the fields that I can use to write the code further. So the UI is quite helpful to begin with workflow coding. I have one example here, put in a message box to say that when the status field changes, it needs to like pop up with a message box. And whatever changes I make, I'll need to save them. And let's say if I open this defect and I change the status, and this comes up with the message box that I've posted in the workflows. So this is with regards to workflows. So from the administration perspective, so when customer admin logs in, and the SaaS customer admins will now have access to the Web Runner admin page, wherein they could define if the project will be using Web Runner or not, depending on the workflows that the projects are using, or for any other reason. If they would like their users not to use the Web Runner, they could like manage it by using the Web Runner admin. Or if they would like Web Runner to be disabled for specific modules, they could do that by coming to this module. So previously, they would have to raise a request and the SaaS team would support them. But now this functionality is available for them to manage. And the second functionality from admin perspective is the module access, through which we can also manage which user group can have access to Web Runner. So these were some of the enhancements in ALM 17. Now moving to ALM 17.0.1. So some of the enhancements in ALM 17.0.1 are the manual runner. The manual runner UI has been revamped, and the UI looks something like this. So it's easier for the testers to run the tests based on the steps that have been defined for the specific tests. Another functionality that has been added for ALM 17.0.1 is the coverage. So in the test plan, we have the requirement coverage tab that has been added, which will show the requirements that is being covered by the specific test. And the same thing from requirements perspective as well. We have the test coverage that has been added, through which it will show us the test, and you can also select the test that will be covering the specific requirement. Another change that has been done is that we have the entity settings tab that has been discontinued, because most of the modules have the select column that can be used to define which of the columns they would like to view. And we also have workflows that can be used to like configure the items that we were configuring by using the entity settings options. So these are the few enhancements in ALM 17 and ALM 17.0.1. As I was talking about, we have this PDF that will give you the list of functionalities that are available in the desktop client based on the version of Web Runner, like what functionalities are available in these versions. So if you are in any doubt, would recommend referring to this PDF. And we also have ALM Idea Exchange. So this is the place where if you think you need any of the enhancements for Web Runner, would highly recommend that you post in this Idea Exchange website. This is monitored by our product management and R&D, And if there is any high demand for any of the features, they would surely consider it for adding these features in the next releases. Moving back to the slides. So in summary, in ALM 17, we have two new modules, the requirements and releases modules that have been introduced. We have the option to now create test tree through the Web Runner UI. So you can create test set folders, test sets, and add test instances to the test sets. We have workflows that have been introduced, which uses JavaScript. So we can create workflows through Web Runner now. There's also like examples for JavaScripts that are available in the Help Center, so which could help our users to get started with the workflow coding for Web Runner by using JavaScripts. There have been lots of enhancements from Defects tab perspective, wherein we can change the column size, sort the column size, or even select the columns that we would like to view through this Defect UI. There is History tab added, then there is also Update Selected option that is available. We have, from the test perspective, we have call to test option that has been added for design steps. And from administration perspective, we can restrict access of Web Runner based on the user groups that have been defined for the project. And now the SaaS customer admins can access Web Runner admin UI for implementing any changes for Web Runner. In 17.0.1, we have revamped the manual runner. So the new UI would help the testers to run the test with much ease. We have the test coverage tab that has been added in the requirements module and the test plan module. Then we have entity settings that has been replaced with workflows and select column options that in the different modules. So this was a quick summary of what has been covered in today's session. Thank you for joining the webinar.